Cold synthetic liquid burned through my veins like liquid nitrogen. Dr. Harrison, a towering reptilian physician using an adopted Earth name, leaned close, his compound eyes wide with horror. Humans were never meant to survive this, he whispered. He was wrong. It didn't kill me. It woke me up. I need you to listen to me very carefully. If you are hearing this broadcast, it means the corporate firewalls at Helios Heavy Industries have finally been breached. My name is John Mercer. I was born in Denver, Colorado. I got my engineering degree from the Colorado School of Mines, and for the last 6 years, I've been a deep space hazard engineer working on the Aegis 7 mining colony. I am a normal guy. Or, at least, I was. What I am about to tell you is going to sound like a fever dream. But I swear on the graves of my parents that every single word is true. I am releasing the security footage and the medical logs alongside this audio file. They are trying to bury this. They are trying to bury me. But humanity needs to know what is actually happening out here in the dark. It started on a Tuesday. I was on a routine maintenance shift in Sector 4, calibrating the magnetic containment fields for the main plasma drill. It's dirty, dangerous work. The kind of blue-collar job that the alien species in the Coalition consider beneath them. They let humans do it because we're sturdy, we don't complain when the gravity generators fluctuate, and our hazard pay is cheaper than buying automated drones. My spotter was a guy named Tommy Henderson, a kid from Chicago who was just trying to pay off his student loans. We were laughing about something, probably the terrible synthesized coffee in the mess hall, when the primary coolant line ruptured. There was no warning alarm. Just a deafening shriek of tearing metal, followed by a wave of superheated plasma. Tommy was thrown clear, but I took the brunt of the blowout on my left side. The sheer thermal shock melted my reinforced hazard suit to my shoulder and thigh. The pain was absolute, a blinding, white-hot agony that completely overrode my nervous system. I remember the smell of ozone and searing flesh, and then the merciful embrace of unconsciousness. I woke up in the trauma ward of the Aegis, 7 Joint Species Medical Bay. The lights were a harsh, sterile blue, optimized for the compound eyes of the facility's chief medical officer. His name was Dr. Harrison. That wasn't his real name, of course. His actual name consisted of a series of clicks and subvocal hums that human vocal cords couldn't replicate. So he, like most of the Kalan species working in human space, adopted a Western name to make us feel more comfortable. He looked a bit like a praying mantis crossed with an iguana, standing nearly 7 feet tall, with scales the color of bruised iron. "Mr. Mercer, you are awake," Harrison's voice synthesizer buzzed, translating his native language into perfect, albeit monotone, English. "Water," I croaked. My throat felt like it was lined with shattered glass. A human nurse, a woman named Emily Carter, whose name tag indicated she had trained at Johns Hopkins before shipping out to the colonies, hurried over with a hydration tube. She looked terrified. Her hands were shaking as she placed the tube to my lips. "You took a nasty hit, John," Emily said softly, avoiding my gaze. "Third-degree burns across 40% of your body. We've stabilized you, but the pain must be. Well, we need to get you under for the skin grafting procedure." I looked down. My entire left side was covered in a thick, translucent biogel, bubbling slightly as it interacted with the charred tissue. The pain was returning, clawing its way through the initial shock. It felt like 1,000 rusted needles were being driven into my bones. "Knock me out, Doc," I gritted through my teeth, gripping the side of the metal gurney. "Just make it stop." Dr. Harrison nodded his large triangular head. "Administering standard human anesthetic. Propofol derivative, class 3. He turned to his medical cart. I watched him through half-closed eyes. The medical bay was chaotic. Sirens were blaring in the distance. The blowout in Sector 4 had apparently caused a station-wide emergency. Paramedics were rushing alien and human workers past the glass doors of my trauma room. In the chaos, I saw Harrison reach for a vial. It wasn't the milky white of a standard anesthetic. It was a glowing, luminescent amber. "Wait," I mumbled, my brain sluggish from the pain. "That doesn't look right." Harrison didn't hear me, or he didn't care. He loaded the amber fluid into a pneumatic syringe. He stepped up to my right arm, pressed the cold metal tip against my neck, and pulled the trigger. The hiss of the pneumatic injector was the loudest sound in the universe. Instantly, a sensation of absolute freezing terror seized my heart. Cold, synthetic liquid burned through my veins like liquid nitrogen. It didn't just hurt. It felt as though my very DNA was being unraveled, violently pulled apart on a microscopic level. My back arched completely off the table. The straps holding me down groaned in protest. Every monitor attached to me began screaming. Red warning lights strobed across the room. Emily shouted something, dropping her data pad. Through the agonizing, blinding static taking over my vision, I saw Dr. Harrison staring at the empty vial in his clawed hand, and then down at me. The look on his reptilian face was one of unmistakable, profound horror. He leaned in close. His voice synthesizer didn't catch his words, but I could read his alien lips, understand the raw, panicked clicks escaping his throat. I heard it in my mind as clearly as if he had spoken it in perfect English. Humans were never meant to survive this, he whispered. Then, my heart exploded in my chest, and I died. I know what death feels like. It is not a tunnel of light, and it is not a peaceful drift into a quiet slumber. It is a violent eviction. For exactly 4 minutes and 22 seconds, there was no electrical activity in my brain. My heart had stopped. My lungs had collapsed. According to the medical logs I later downloaded, my core temperature spiked to 108 degrees Fahrenheit before plummeting to 70. In that void, I didn't see angels. I saw my grandfather, Robert Mercer. He was a tough old union steelworker back in Pennsylvania. When I was 12, he was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him 3 months. He lived for 5 more years out of sheer stubborn spite. He used to tell me, Davy, the human body is just a machine running on thousands of years of bad weather, starvation, and apex predators. We don't break. We just get meaner. While I was dead on that table, floating in the dark, my body was proving my grandfather right. What Dr. Harrison had injected me with was a compound known in corporate black sites as synthedrin omicron. I found that out much later. It was a biological catalyst engineered for a highly advanced silicon-based alien species. For them, it acted as a rapid cellular regenerator. For carbon-based life forms like humans, it was supposed to be instantaneous necrosis. It was designed to shatter our delicate carbon bonds, liquefying the internal organs in seconds. But Earth is a death world. Our evolutionary history is a chaotic, brutal slog through ice ages, supervolcanoes, global pandemics, and mass extinctions. Human biology is a messy, deeply paranoid fortress. When the synthedrin omicron hit my bloodstream and attempted to unravel my DNA, my body didn't surrender. It perceived the alien catalyst as a hostile pathogen, the ultimate biological threat. My immune system, honed by millions of years of surviving the Black Death, the Spanish flu, and countless other microscopic wars, went into hyperdrive. My macrophages didn't just attack the alien cells, they consumed them, reverse engineering their energy output. My mitochondria began to absorb the ambient radiation of the compound, supercharging my ATP production to levels that should have spontaneously combusted my cells. Instead of breaking my carbon bonds, the alien compound accidentally forced them to restructure, to adapt, to evolve. I woke up with a gasp that sounded like a gunshot. I sat bolt upright on the gurney, snapping the heavy synthetic leather restraints as if they were made of wet tissue paper. The sound of tearing fabric echoed through the silent room. The harsh blue lights weren't harsh anymore. I could see the individual dust motes dancing in the air. I could hear the hum of the station's life support systems running behind the titanium bulkheads. I could hear Emily Carter's heart beating at 130 beats per minute, huddled in the corner of the room. I could hear Dr. Harrison's dual respiratory sacs inflating and deflating in rapid, terrified succession. I looked down at my left side. The translucent biogel was gone, evaporated by my body heat. But more shockingly, the catastrophic third-degree burns were gone. The skin wasn't just healed, it was pristine. It looked tougher, slightly iridescent under the lighting, completely unblemished. I flexed my hand. The muscles in my arm corded tightly, moving with a fluid, terrifying power that I had never possessed before. I felt like a coiled spring, vibrating with an immense, terrifying energy. "John?" Emily's voice was barely a squeak. She was clutching a defibrillator, her eyes wide with a terror usually reserved for apex predators. I swung my legs over the side of the gurney. The cold metal floor felt grounding. "I'm okay," I said. My voice sounded deeper, resonant, vibrating in my own chest. I feel incredible. Dr. Harrison finally moved. He backed away from me slowly, his claws raised in a defensive posture. This is impossible, his synthesizer droned, the volume erratic. Your cellular structure should have collapsed. The Omicron strain is lethal to all primate-descended biology. It is a mathematical certainty. You injected me with poison? I asked, taking a step toward him. I didn't mean to move so fast. I just thought about taking a step, and suddenly I was standing inches from his chest. The speed was staggering. Harrison flinched violently, crashing into a tray of surgical instruments. Scalpels and clamps clattered loudly against the floorboards. It was a mistake! A catastrophic error in the triage chaos. Harrison babbled, his synthesizer struggling to keep up with his rapid clicks. I grabbed the wrong vial. You must believe me, Mr. Mercer. Before I could demand more answers, the heavy blast doors of the trauma ward slid open with a violent hiss. Commander William Reynolds, the head of Aegis, 7 Security, marched in. He was a veteran of the Jovian Wars, a man who looked like he chewed gravel for breakfast. He was flanked by 4 heavily armored security guards, all humans, their pulse rifles leveled directly at my chest. Stand down, Mercer, Reynolds barked, his eyes darting from the snapped restraints to my perfectly healed skin. Dr. Harrison triggered a code black, biological contamination protocol. You are under immediate quarantine. Reynolds, wait. I'm perfectly fine, I said, raising my hands to show I wasn't a threat. He is a vector, Harrison suddenly screeched, pointing a trembling claw at me. He absorbed the Omicron. His biology is volatile. He must be contained immediately. Get on the ground, John. Now, Reynolds ordered, his finger tightening on the trigger of his rifle. Don't make me put a hole in you. I looked at Emily, who was weeping silently in the corner. I looked at Harrison, whose compound eyes held a mixture of scientific awe and absolute, unadulterated fear. And then I looked at the security guards. For the first time in my life, looking down the barrel of a military-grade weapon didn't make me feel fear. It made me feel insulted. The alien compound coursing through my veins was whispering to my primate brain, telling me that these weapons were nothing, that I was something else now. But I was still human enough to know that if I fought back now, people would die. I slowly lowered myself to my knees, lacing my fingers behind my head. All right, Commander, I'm cooperating. As they slapped heavy magnetic shackles on my wrists, shackles that felt delightfully flimsy against my new muscles, I looked back at Dr. Harrison. The lie in his alien eyes was obvious. It wasn't a mistake. They dragged me down to level 6, the high-security quarantine block. It's a place usually reserved for miners who pick up deep rock parasites or exotic fungal spores. They threw me into Cell 4, a 10 by 10 titanium cube with a single wall of reinforced, transparent aluminum. For 3 hours, I paced. I couldn't sit still. The energy inside me was like a trapped thunderstorm. I began testing myself quietly. I pressed my thumb against the solid titanium wall of the cell and pushed. The metal yielded like warm wax, leaving a perfect thumbprint indented in the bulkhead. I picked up the metal drinking cup from the sink and crushed it into a sphere the size of a marble with 2 fingers, barely exerting any effort. My mind was racing as fast as my body. I remembered Harrison's exact words. The Omicron strain is lethal to all primate-descended biology. It is a mathematical certainty. If he knew it was lethal to humans, why did he have a loaded syringe of it on a trauma cart in a ward treating a human burn victim? Medical protocols on Aegis 7 were notoriously strict. Biometrics locked every cabinet. You couldn't just grab the wrong vial. The hiss of the airlock cycling interrupted my thoughts. The reinforced door slid back, and Dr. Harrison walked into the observation corridor, safely separated from me by 3 inches of transparent aluminum. He wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a man in a bespoke, immaculate charcoal suit that cost more than my entire life's salary. I recognized him immediately. Jonathan Davies. He was the senior operations liaison for Helios Heavy Industries. He was the corporate suit who decided when our hazard pay got cut, when our oxygen rations were reduced to save money, and when a mining shaft was deemed safe enough to work in. He was a sociopath with a spreadsheet. Fascinating, Davies murmured, adjusting his expensive glasses as he looked at me through the glass. He didn't look at me like a man. He looked at me like a highly profitable piece of machinery. Doctor Harrison, You assured me this would be a clean disposal. It should have been, Harrison protested, his synthesizer buzzing with agitation. The compound was designed to trigger aggressive cellular apoptosis. He should have dissolved into organic slurry within 60 seconds. Instead, his immune system weaponized it. His white blood cells dismantled the catalyst and integrated its kinetic properties into his own muscular and skeletal structure. You tried to assassinate me? I stepped up to the glass, slamming my palms against it. The heavy, transparent aluminum shuddered violently, spiderwebbing slightly at the edges. Both Davies and Harrison flinched, stepping back. Assassinate is such an ugly word, Mr. Mercer, Davies said, regaining his composure and smoothing his tie. Think of it more as a controlled demographic adjustment. What the hell are you talking about, Davies? I growled. My voice was low, vibrating against the glass. Davies sighed, looking at me with feigned pity. Humanity is a problem, John. We breed too fast, we expand too aggressively, and we are terribly, terribly resilient. The Alien Coalition, the Kalins, the Vex, the Centaurians, they are terrified of us. We went from discovering fire to cracking the atom in a fraction of the time it took them. We reached the stars and immediately started out competing them for resources. He paced in front of the glass. Helios Heavy Industries relies on coalition trade agreements. But the coalition threatened to embargo Earth unless we helped them solve their human problem. They didn't want a war. Humans are too vicious in a fight. They wanted a quiet culling, a localized pandemic. I stared at him, the horrifying truth dawning on me. Project Icarus, I breathed, recalling a rumored black-budget project we used to whisper about in the mess hall. Exactly, Davies smiled, a cold, reptilian expression that looked more alien than Dr. Harrison. The synthedrin Omicron wasn't meant to kill just you. It was designed to mimic a virulent respiratory virus. You were supposed to die horribly, and in the process, your decaying body would release airborne spores tailored specifically to human DNA. It would have wiped out the human workforce on Aegis. 7 inches, 3 days, paving the way for docile, automated alien labor. A tragic medical accident, the coalition would say. Thoughts and prayers. He pointed a finger at me. But you ruined it. Your stubborn, brutish, Earth-evolved biology refused to die. You didn't just survive the bioweapon, John. You ate it. So what now? I asked, clenching my fists. The metal shackles around my wrists were beginning to warp from the tension in my forearms. You just keep me locked up here as a science experiment? Oh, no, Davies laughed. You are far too dangerous for that. You are living proof that their ultimate weapon is useless against us. If the Coalition finds out humanity can adapt to the Omicron strain, they will panic. They will declare open war. So, Helios is going to do what we do best. We are going to erase the liability. He turned to Dr. Harrison. Flood the chamber with neurotoxin. The standard stuff. Let's see if his upgraded immune system can handle sarin gas. Harrison hesitated. Sir, the scientific value of his biology... Do it, Doctor! Davies snapped. Harrison walked over to the control console. His claws danced across the holographic interface. Inside my cell, the air vents hissed, and a thick, yellowish gas began to pour into the room. I took a deep breath before the gas reached me. I looked at Davies, who was watching with a smug, satisfied smirk. He thought I was just a dumb hazard engineer. He thought a piece of glass could hold me. I raised my shackled hands, gripped the heavy magnetic chain connecting my wrists, and pulled. With a sound like a tortured scream, the reinforced titanium chain snapped in half. Davies's smirk vanished. I stepped back, planted my feet, and drove my right fist directly into the center of the transparent aluminum wall. The impact sounded like a bomb going off. The glass, rated to withstand the vacuum of space and small arms fire, shattered into 1,000,000 jagged pieces, exploding outward into the corridor. The blast threw Dr. Harrison over the control console and knocked Jonathan Davies flat on his back. The sarin gas spilled out into the hallway, alarms instantly shifting from a steady blare to a frantic, high-pitched screech. Red lights strobed wildly. I walked out of the cell, my boots crunching on the shattered glass. The neurotoxin washed over me, but my lungs barely registered it. It felt like breathing in a slightly dusty room. My body was already breaking down the poison, neutralizing it before it could even reach my brain. I reached down and grabbed Jonathan Davies by the lapels of his ruined, expensive suit, lifting him effortlessly off the floor with one hand. His eyes were bulging, his face turning purple from the gas and sheer terror. "You're right, Davies," I whispered, pulling his face close to mine. "Humanity is a problem, and right now, I'm your problem." I dropped Jonathan Davies onto the shattered glass. He scrambled backward, gagging and coughing up phlegm as the sarin gas ravaged his lungs, desperately grasping for the emergency rebreather mounted on the wall. I could have killed him right there. It would have taken less than an ounce of pressure to snap his neck. But I wasn't a corporate assassin. I was an engineer. And engineers fix problems. Davies wasn't the root problem. He was a symptom of a much larger, uglier disease. The immediate problem was the blaring alarms and the heavy, synchronized thud of combat boots echoing down the corridor. Aegis, 7 Security, was deploying, and they were bringing the heavy artillery. "Lockdown. Sector 6 is compromised. Lethal force authorized," Commander Reynolds' voice roared over the station's intercom system. I left Davies wheezing on the floor and sprinted down the hall. My perception of the world had fundamentally shifted. Everything felt impossibly slow. The flashing red strobe lights of the emergency system seemed to pulse in a lazy, rhythmic crawl. I could see the individual droplets of condensation falling from the overhead pipes. I could smell the ozone from the electrical fires, the copper tang of blood, and the distinct, sterile scent of pulse rifle coolant. I rounded the corner and nearly collided with a squad of 4 security officers. They were wearing full tactical armor, their weapons raised. "Contact! Fire!" one of them yelled. A hail of superheated plasma rounds ripped down the hallway. Instinctively, I threw my arms over my face. The first few shots struck my chest and shoulders. The impact was immense, like being hit by a sledgehammer swung by a heavyweight boxer. But the burning didn't last. It was the most bizarre sensation I have ever experienced. As the plasma seared into my flesh, the synthedrin omicron coursing through my veins reacted instantly. My skin hardened at the point of impact, taking on a slick, dark iridescence. The kinetic energy was absorbed, dispersed across my newly dense muscular structure, and the thermal damage was regenerated before the smoke even cleared. The pain was just a dull throb, gone in a heartbeat. I dropped my arms. The guards stopped firing, their weapons lowering an inch as they stared at me in disbelief. My uniform was burned to ash, but the skin beneath was completely unblemished. "What the hell is he?" one of the guards whispered over his external comms. "I don't want to hurt you guys," I shouted, my voice booming down the metal corridor, rattling the loose fixtures. "Davies is trying to purge the station. It's a biological attack." They didn't listen. Corporate conditioning is a hell of a drug. The squad leader racked his weapon, dialing it to maximum output. "Take him down!" I didn't give them the chance to fire again. I lunged forward. The distance between us was 40 feet. I crossed it in less than 2 seconds. I didn't throw a punch if I hit them with my full strength. I knew I would cave their chests in, armor and all. Instead, I grabbed the squad leader's pulse rifle by the barrel and squeezed. The hardened titanium crumpled like tinfoil in my grip. I shoved him backward into his squad mates, sending all 4 of them crashing to the deck in a tangle of limbs and tactical gear. Before they could recover, I tore the main power conduit from the wall, plunging the corridor into darkness, and sprinted past them. I needed proof. Without the data, I was just a rogue miner suffering from radiation-induced psychosis. I needed to get to the main server hub in Sector 3, but my clearance had undoubtedly been revoked. "John, over here!" A frantic whisper hissed from a maintenance alcove to my left. I stopped, my boots skidding on the metal grating. A small hatch was propped open, and a pale face was looking out. It was Emily Carter, the nurse from the trauma ward. She was clutching a high-clearance medical tablet against her chest, trembling uncontrollably. "Emily, you need to get to the escape pods," I said, crouching next to the hatch. "Davies is initiating a cover-up. He's going to kill everyone who knows about the Omicron compound." "I know," she choked out, tears cutting tracks through the soot on her cheeks. I heard the comms chatter. "They're sealing the trauma ward. They're trapping the patients inside and venting the oxygen. They're blaming it on a structural failure from your blowout." A cold, heavy fury settled into my stomach. Can that tablet access the mainframe? Emily looked down at the device, then up at me, her eyes lingering on the iridescent, hardened skin of my arm. Yes, Dr. Harrison has level 9 clearance. I grabbed his tablet when the glass exploded. But John, the server hub is heavily fortified. We can't just walk in. We aren't walking, I said, reaching down and offering her my hand. We're going to tear the doors off. Come on. Emily hesitated for only a fraction of a second before taking my hand. I pulled her out of the hatch and hoisted her onto my back. Hold on tight and close your eyes. I bypassed the main corridors, opting instead for the heavy industrial transit shafts. These were vertical drops meant for massive cargo elevators, stretching hundreds of feet up through the core of Aegis 7. I stood at the edge of the abyss, looked up at the dimly lit maintenance ladder, and jumped. The physical power inside me was terrifying. I leaped 15 feet straight up, grabbed the heavy steel rungs of the ladder, and began to climb. It wasn't climbing. It was a vertical sprint. I scaled the shaft like a spider, my muscles burning with endless cold fire. Emily buried her face in my shoulder, screaming over the rush of wind. Within minutes, we reached level 3. I kicked the access door off its hinges, it flew into the hallway and crumpled against the far wall with a deafening crash. We stepped out into the server vestibule. The main hub was behind a massive, 2-foot-thick vault door made of reinforced depleted uranium. Standing between us and the door was Commander Reynolds, flanked by a dozen heavily armed corporate mercenaries. These weren't station security. These were Helios Black Ops. They wore matte black armor and carried heavy railguns. That's far enough, Mercer, Reynolds commanded. He looked tired, his weathered face tight with stress. Davies has authorized me to blow this entire deck into orbit if you take another step. Commander, listen to me, I said, putting Emily down behind a metal pillar for cover. I stepped out into the open, my hands empty. Davies lied to you. He lied to everyone. The blowout in Sector 4 wasn't an accident. It was a distraction. They brought a bioweapon onto this station. A coalition plague designed to wipe out the human workforce. The mercenaries didn't flinch, but Reynolds frowned, his eyes narrowing. You're out of your mind, son. You're suffering from plasma shock. Then why did I survive a lethal injection in the trauma ward? I challenged, walking slowly toward him. Why did a direct hit from a plasma rifle feel like a sunburn? They tried to kill me, Reynolds. And now they're going to vent the medical bay to cover their tracks. You have men in that bay. Tommy Henderson is in there. Jackson is in there. Are you going to let a corporate suit murder your crew? Reynolds gripped his rifle tighter. Davies said, you were infected. A biohazard. Look at me, I roared, spreading my arms. Do I look infected? I'm adapted. Our biology beat their poison. Emily has Dr. Harrison's tablet. The proof is right there. The Culling Protocol. Project Icarus. Let her plug it into the hub, Commander. Let us show you. Reynolds stared at me. He looked at the shattered access door I had kicked in. He looked at the impossible lack of burns on my body. Then he looked at his comms unit. Command, this is Reynolds, he spoke into his shoulder mic. Status on Sector 4 trauma ward? Static crackled. Then a cold, automated corporate voice replied, Sector 4 is sealed. Emergency venting procedure initiated to contain biological contagion. Do not interfere, Commander. Reynolds' face drained of color. He had served with half the men in that ward. He had carried them out of firefights in the Jovian Wars. He slowly lowered his rifle. Boss? One of the Black Ops mercenaries grunted, aiming his railgun squarely at my head. We have orders. Change of orders, Reynolds growled, turning his rifle on the mercenary. Stand down. The vestibule erupted into chaos. The Helios mercenaries didn't hesitate. Their loyalty was bought and paid for by Jonathan Davies. The moment Reynolds turned his weapon, they opened fire. Get to the console! I screamed at Emily, throwing myself directly into the line of fire. The railgun slugs hit me at Mach 3. The kinetic force was staggering. It felt like being hit by a freight train. I was thrown backward, crashing into the bulkhead, but the synthadron Omicron surged. My skeletal structure, reinforced by the alien catalyst, held firm. My skin bruised violently, a horrific shade of purple and black. But within seconds, the cellular regeneration swept over the damage, knitting the ruptured tissue back together. I spit out a mouthful of blood that tasted like copper and electricity and charged. Reynolds was taking cover behind a barricade, providing suppressing fire, but he was pinned down. I moved faster than the mercenaries could track. I grabbed the barrel of a railgun, ripping it from the operative's hands, and swung it like a baseball bat into the chest plate of the next mercenary. The armor caved in. I tossed him aside and grabbed two more by their collars, slamming their heads together hard enough to shatter their helmets and knock them unconscious. I didn't kill them. The human body is a miracle, and I wasn't going to be the one to break it. I disabled them, moving like a shadow of pure kinetic violence until the vestibule was quiet, save for the groans of the unconscious mercs. "Jesus Christ," Reynolds breathed, stepping out from behind cover, staring at me, as if I were a ghost. "Get the door open," I told him, breathless but unharmed. Reynolds didn't argue. He walked to the vault interface, entered his override codes, and the massive uranium door slowly ground open. Emily rushed inside, her hands flying across the terminal. She plugged Dr. Harrison's tablet into the mainframe. "I'm bypassing the Helios firewalls," Emily said, her voice shaking but resolute. "I've got the files. Project Icarus, the communications between Davies and the Centaurian High Council, the chemical structure of synthedrin omicron. Everything." "Send it all," I said. "Every human colony, every news outlet on Earth. Broadcast it on all unencrypted frequencies. Upload at 20%. She read the screen. Suddenly, the station violently shuddered. The lights flickered and died, replaced entirely by the crimson glow of emergency backups. Heavy, metallic footsteps echoed from the transit shaft. Jonathan Davies stepped into the vestibule. He wasn't wearing his ruined charcoal suit anymore. He was strapped into a Class V industrial loader exosuit, a massive 8-foot-tall hydraulic rig used for hauling titanium ore. The suit was equipped with heavy plasma welders and pneumatic crushing claws. Davies's face was visible behind the reinforced roll cage. He looked deranged, his eyes wide, sweat pouring down his face. "You ignorant, primitive animals." Davies' voice boomed through the exosuit's external speakers. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're condemning the entire human race. If the Coalition knows you survived, they won't use a plague next time. They'll use orbital bombardments." "Then we'll survive that too," I said, stepping between the vault door and the exosuit. "Upload at what, Emily?" 40%! She yelled. "Shut it down!" Davies screamed, charging forward. The metal deck groaned under the sheer weight of the exosuit. He swung a massive hydraulic claw at my head. I ducked, the metal arm smashing into the wall behind me, tearing a massive gash in the titanium plating. I countered, driving my fist into the knee joint of the exosuit. The impact shattered the hydraulic casing, spraying pressurized fluid everywhere, but the suit was too massive. Davies brought his other arm down in a crushing hammer blow, catching me square in the chest. I went down hard. The wind was violently knocked out of my lungs, and for a terrifying second, my vision went completely white. Davies planted the heavy metallic foot of the rig onto my chest, pinning me to the floor. The servos whined as he applied pressure, trying to crush my ribcage. My bones creaked. The pressure was immense, easily enough to flatten a standard ground car. But humanity was built for pressure. I grabbed the hydraulic piston of the leg pinning me down. I roared, pouring every ounce of the alien-infused adrenaline, every shred of human spite into my arms. The muscles in my neck strained, corded tight. I pushed back. Davies' eyes widened in horror as he realized what was happening. The mechanical leg began to lift. "No," Davies whispered. "That's 3 tons of pressure. That's impossible." "We don't break," I gritted out through clenched teeth, my grandfather's voice echoing in my head. "We just get meaner." With a final, explosive surge of strength, I ripped the central hydraulic line completely out of the exosuit's leg. The leg gave way. I rolled out from under the foot, sprang up, and grabbed the roll cage, protecting Davies' cockpit. I wrenched the heavy steel bars apart as if they were made of plastic. I reached in, grabbed Davies by his tactical vest, and ripped him entirely out of the pilot's seat, throwing him across the room. He slammed into the wall and crumpled, groaning, effectively out of the fight. "Upload at 100%, Emily shouted. "John, it's out. The broadcast is live." I looked at Reynolds. The commander gave me a grim nod. The medical ward lockdown just lifted. Emily's hack overrode the purge. The patients are safe. Reynolds racked his rifle. But Helios is going to send a fleet to glass this station. You need to leave, Mercer. You're the physical proof. If they capture you, they can still bury this. What about you? I asked. I've got a crew to protect, Reynolds said, looking toward the transit shaft. I'm going to get my people off this rock. Go. Take the stealth freighter in Bay 4. I looked at Emily. Come with me. She shook her head, a brave smile breaking through her fear. I'm a nurse, John. I'm staying with the commander to help evacuate the wounded. Show them what we're made of. I didn't waste time with goodbyes. I ran. I made it to Bay 4, just as the station's automated defense grid started trying to lock onto me. I hijacked the Helios stealth freighter, bypassed the docking clamps with sheer physical force, and launched into the black abyss of deep space. As I punched the hyperdrive, I watched the Aegis, 7 station, shrink into a speck of light behind me. I don't know where I'm going next. I don't need food, and I don't need sleep. At least not the way I used to. The alien catalyst is fully integrated now. I am something new. A weapon born of their arrogance and our endurance. The alien coalition thought Earth was a pest problem they could quietly exterminate. They thought human biology was weak, easily shattered by their superior science. They didn't realize that by trying to wipe us out, they handed us the key to our own evolution. They woke us up. And now, out here in the dark, they are going to learn what happens when you corner a predator from a death world. If you're hearing this, the truth is out. They will try to take this video down. They will call it a hoax, a corporate stunt, or a hallucination. Do not let them silence us. Hit the like button to boost the algorithm, share this broadcast with everyone you know, and subscribe to this frequency to stay updated. We are not weaks. We are humanity, and we are coming for them. Stay vigilant, stay alive, and keep your eyes on the stars.
Hi, my name is Tran Trung, the owner and manager of Palace Truths. After watching the video, the alien doctor injected me by mistake, then whispered, "Humans were never meant to survive this. I'd really like to know what you think. How did this story make you feel?" For me, the strongest feeling was suspense mixed with determination. The idea of facing something that should be impossible to survive creates immediate tension, but what makes the story interesting is seeing how the characters respond when everything seems stacked against them. It's that resilience and refusal to give up that really stayed with me. One gentle lesson here is that people are often capable of more than others expect. Whether it's in a sci-fi adventure or real life, we sometimes discover our strengths only when we're pushed beyond our comfort zones. Have you ever surprised yourself by handling something you thought was impossible? And what moment in this story grabbed your attention the most? Thanks for spending time with Palace Truths. If this story meant something to you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and maybe like or subscribe for more stories like this.